Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Pricing on the Cake podcast, the podcast that's all about growing a business profitably to create the lifestyle and income that you want. Today, I'm very excited as I'm joined by a very, very special guest who I have admired and stalked absolutely for a very long time, Renee Shea. I'm very excited to have you here. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, you are welcome, and I'm excited for this conversation.
Yeah, it's going to be really, really good. And before we dive in, I'd love it if you would introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Sure. So my name is Renee Shea, like Courtney mentioned. And for a number of years now, I have run a women's coaching and photography business. I focus primarily on personal branding, or branding for women who are the solo entrepreneurs or the leaders in their organization or in their work. I also have a business called Promote Her. And that's kind of like the training education arm of what I do, which is kind of really focused on helping women to build up their self-promotion muscle, which is something that we often struggle with, but is really important in building our careers and our businesses. So that's, in a quick snapshot, what I do.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that so much. I love the passion that you have for helping women. And I see a lot of your posts, promoting, showing up, being visible, owning your power and owning all of that. And really interesting to hear you mention the self-promotion muscle. Why do you think it is that women struggle with that so much?
I think particularly and focusing on women within largely Western cultures, because that's where we are and that's where we mostly do business. We have grown up very much in a society that is all about women having beauty as a currency, and not much else. So we are trained to not speak up, not share our mind. We're trained that bragging is bad, and talking about ourselves is bad, and we should be talking about other people. And all of this stuff together combines to create a I want to call it a space within us that finds it very uncomfortable to talk about what we do, and whether it's at work or whether it's outside of work. It's about the promotion, or because I use promotion because it's the simplest word, right? But it's about how we share and communicate what we do and what we're good at, whether it's in work or not. And there's so many ways that we're taught that we shouldn't do that. And so it's becomes a skill that we don't have. And yet when we look at research about, say, promotion in the workplace, or, women moving from entry level into leadership positions, one of the things that stops us the most is not putting our hand up for job applications, or putting our hand up in the meeting to mention, to contribute, or any of the ways that we might put our hand up. And so there's this double bind where if we put our hands up, we feel really uncomfortable. We hate the process of doing it.
Yeah.
And yet if we don't do it, then we don't get the opportunities that we are rightfully deserving to do.
Yep. No, I couldn't agree more. You've basically echoed everything that I've seen as well. And it's sad too, because it affects so many women who otherwise are incredibly talented, incredibly skilled, experienced at what they do, and have so much value to contribute. And in a lot of the conversations I've had with women around this, sometimes they'll often say, can I still be successful? Can I still reach, the places that I want to get to without, being so visible and putting my photo online and, talking about myself and bragging about myself, right? Because like you said, a lot of us have this kind of fear of like, oh no, I can't do that. I can't talk about myself. I can't sound selfish or arrogant or any of that. Can you talk a little bit about what happens when we don't put ourselves out there, and why being visible and showing up and putting our hand up is so important and really crucial for the kind of success that we want?
Look, there is so much that I could say on this, so you're going to have to rein me in if I start going off on tangents.
Oh, no, go away.
The main thing is, look, sure, I'm sure, as somebody in business or somebody in their career, you could get to where you want to go. without doing these things. What I would say, however, is that you are seriously stifling yourself and your opportunities. What I would also say is that, and this is where I personally believe, like I say before, I work around personal brands, and I refer to personal brands, it's like a playbook. It's just purely a tool that helps you with the things to say and do and what to share to show who you actually are. Now, one of the misconceptions about branding and about self-promotion as a whole is that it is bragging. And we use the phrase bragging, but the problem is if it's based in fact, it's not bragging, right? It's purely just telling the truth, our truth. I have got X qualification. I have got this many years working in this industry. I contributed to this project. It's not bragging because it's actually based in fact. It's real stuff. Now, the problem is, like I say, we don't have this muscle, and we are very socially conditioned not to share this stuff. And so without doing it, we're not showing others, whether that be the people who are looking at us to hire us for a job or to hire us, as a client, or, and this is where my passion really kicks in, or the young women around us who don't know that you can be whatever you are because they don't see other women doing it. And to me, having a personal brand and being visible is like the ultimate in rebellion. It's revolutionizing how our future generations can see what it means to be a woman at work. Now, my clients are both within organizations and in business themselves. So when I say at work, just as a caveat, I mean both places. But I have got clients who have been I was going to say the wrong one, are ecologists, right? And so the very idea of being a woman ecologist is really unusual in many industries. And so as young women who might be interested in that, if they don't see her online, if they don't see her talking about what she can do, talking about what she has done, then there's less representation in the future to be in these roles. And this is where I think visibility and branding and representation for gender and racial representation is critical.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a really good point, because so often we're worried about what competitors or other people will think of us, but we often don't think of like, well, who am I setting an example for? Who's going to look at me and go, oh, I reckon I could do that. Maybe I could do that. She's doing that. I wonder if maybe there's a chance that I could achieve that kind of success. In terms of,
there is that beautiful quote. It's so simple that you can't be what you can't see.
Can't see. Yes, I love that. I love that quote so much. And it's so true.
And so it's true. And we are, and this is, and I guess that it's a slight digress, but I find, because my clients are women, we often don't like doing things for our own benefit, but we will sure stand up and be mama bear for things that are of other people's benefits. And I think that it is really a really valuable tool if it helps you to think about it from that perspective. If you can't be what you can't see, it is our responsibility to be seen. It's our responsibility to be the role model. And that puts us in a position where we might have to do things that don't feel comfortable. But for the generations around us, the younger women who are potentially looking to go into whatever field you're in, need you to do it so that they can see that it can be done.
That's so powerful. Powerful stuff. I love it. I'd love to chat more about the personal branding side of things, because I think a lot of women, especially if they're younger or newer to business, they might think of personal branding as like, oh, it's nice, but not necessary, or it's not for me because I don't want to be, big and famous and everyone knows me and everything like that. So how should we be thinking about personal brand, and how do we go about starting that, creating that?
Sure. Now, I think one of the tricks with personal branding is that there has been, industries in the past that may have understood the power of personal brand and maybe taken it a bit in the wrong way. And they created this yucky feel, this icky feeling about personal branding. And, we think of, I'm not sure who's in your audience, but the old school real estate agents, used car salesmen, this kind of vibe. We see these kind of professions and we go, oh, I don't want to be like that.
Yeah.
And so it's created this picture in people's minds about what a personal brand is. On the flip side, we see the young Instagram influencers who are, you know, sharing absolutely everything about themselves as a personal brand also. So we look at both of these pictures and we go, I don't want that.
Yeah.
But like I said before, to me, the truth of a personal brand is really that it's a playbook. It's just literally a way of a set of guidelines to talk about who you are, what you do, and how to show up in whatever realm you're showing up. Now, in order to make that personal brand and that playbook the most effective and most realistic one, you need to really know yourself. And this is where the overlap is for me, in that it is business, but it is also personal. You can't show up as yourself if you don't know who you are. You will tire out, you will get exhausted, you will not come across as authentic if you're trying to create a brand that's actually not based on fact. So this then leads into the other challenge that we find, is that the whole process of being very self-reflective, of spending time looking at who you are and what you can do, what your strengths are, what your interests and passions and values are, it's not something that we spend a whole lot of time doing. And so it's really important in building the most authentic personal brand that you actually spend time in that self-reflection process. And I have a whole methodology that I use with my clients. That's a 4-step part. And 2 of those steps are focused very internally, very much about who you are, what your strengths are, what you love doing, what lights you up, what you're good at doing. Because without that foundation, you're creating a playbook that's just based on nonsense. And that's where we start feeling icky. But if we go back to being real and being honest, then it's not icky, it's not fake, it's not bragging, it's not even arrogant, which is another one of the words that I get a lot. It's just very much you being you in a more visible way.
Yeah, absolutely. I often find that one of the fears that comes up for women when they're looking at, you know, being more visible and creating their personal brand is they'll be like, oh, but what if people don't like me, right? What if I drill into all my likes, you know, the things I love, the things that light me up, and I share about it, and people are like, oh, you're a weirdo, you're too quirky, you're too this, you're too much, you know, all of those things, and people just don't like it. And it's funny because I know for myself and a lot of the clients that I've taken through, you know, similar exercises, every time I drill down and refine my personal brand and dig into like my own values, where I shine, what my strengths are, and the more open I am about those things, I actually find people resonate to me a lot more, because they're like, oh, I see you. I see parts of you. I see you sharing yourself. And like you said before, it's authentic. And people are drawn to that, especially now more than ever, now that, you know, consumers are becoming a lot more aware, a lot more ethics aware, and they want to connect with people. They want to connect with values when it comes to business. So I think that's really, really important.
Yeah. And our ability to read and feel BS now is like so much higher than what it used to be, particularly online. So if you pretend and if you are putting on a face, then my belief is that you will burn out so much quicker. But B, yeah, people can smell it.
Yeah.
And I would also argue there's a lot of people in this world, and not one of the clients that I've worked with has ever dug deep into that process and found stuff that hasn't resonated with people. Like I don't know where it comes from, and I know I've got it myself, but this sense that if people know the real me, they won't like me, it's just bollocks. Right? Our desire or our inherent wounding that we need to be liked and we need to be accepted is really powerful and really strong, and it kind of clouds our judgment in a lot of ways. There are very few people on this earth who are not likable.
Yeah, that's very true. And, you know, it's so powerful because it comes from a very deeply set and very old part of our brain. Our survival mechanism is, I need to be liked. We're social creatures. We're wired to be interdependent with other people. We want to belong to the group. We want to be in the group. We want to be included, because, you know, back in the cave people times, if we weren't liked by the group and we were shunned, no shelter, no food, you freeze to death or get eaten by a lion, right? That's really dangerous. But the problem is that that part of our brain doesn't really understand that things like, oh, someone just not liking my post online or writing a mean comment or whatever isn't the same thing as a lion, but it has the same reaction, right? And
Absolutely.
it's so powerful. And I think it's drilling down into that stuff about you can also counter that in a way, because you come to appreciate yourself. You come to really learn about and love those parts of yourself that make you who you are, your values, the things that light you up. And when you start to grow in that confidence in yourself and that self-worth, that is going to, over time, decrease your need for people to like you when you show up. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's a really, one of the, and I'm sure you have it yourself, is that one of the things that people say is just, I just don't have the confidence to do it. And to me, in many ways, confidence is a bollocks, because it's a word that we use to describe a whole range of feelings. And there's so many different things in there. But ironically, one of the things that will build your confidence, and I mean, even in the research that breaks down confidence, you've got self-esteem and self-efficacy. And self-esteem comes from knowing yourself. And that comes from spending time looking at your values. It comes from spending time knowing what you're good at. And one of the other things then with the self-efficacy side of it is knowing what you're good at. So you are more capable of showing up and doing something when you know you're good at it. It's kind of like a truism, right? But unless you take time to stop and look at what you're good at, how do you know what you can turn up as? How do you know what you can do if you're constantly downplaying everything that you've done or achieved? And so this is the bind that we get ourselves in, is that if we go, oh, I can't look at the things that I can do because that means I'm bragging and it means that I'm full of myself, which is clearly one of those phrases that we have. So I'm not going to look and acknowledge those things. And yet at the same time, I'm going to complain because I don't have the self-confidence to do things.
Yes.
So we kind of twist ourselves up in this knot of our own making. One of the other things, just to kind of come back to the caveman days, that I wanted to mention too, is that, or rather the being liked and the need to be liked, which is very true. But the challenge that I find also is that we develop our internal guide of what is acceptable and what is not. And that is oftentimes misleading. I do a lot of work with clients on values, right? And understanding what your values are. And it never ceases to amaze me the amount of times somebody might say, well, I think it's this one, but I don't think it should be. I think it should be this one because it's more socially acceptable. And I'm going to use money as the classic example because I know that that's something that you talk about. To say I want to be wealthy as a core value, right? Oftentimes women, and I'm sure you find this, don't like that. Right? Because they go, well, it's not right for me to be wanting to value money.
Yeah.
Now, when you unpack that, there are so many reasons why you might value money. But because we've put this label on it that to value money is bad, we don't let ourselves explore that next level. We don't go, okay, money for me or wealth for me is security in my home for my children, right? What's nothing wrong with that?
No.
Wealth for me might be, it enables me to live a generous life and to give in ways that I want to give. There's nothing wrong with that, right? And so we also go, well, if somebody finds out that one of my core values is wealth, they might not like me. They might think I'm greedy.
Yeah.
They might think I'm whatever. So I'm not going to show them that part of myself. But the challenge is, again, you've already laid value judgments over what is important to you.
Yeah.
And so it's really, excuse me, it's really a matter of peeling away these onion layers. And that's hard work for anybody.
Yeah, no, I like that example of the analogy you used actually of peeling away those onion layers because it takes time, right? I'm quite open.
And it inevitably makes you cry.
Yes, I know. Do you know what? I think a good cry now and then is pretty good. It's pretty healthy. Brings all the shit out, basically.
Yeah.
No, I find that the more open I am about having money as one of my values and being someone who I like money. I like making money. I like having enough money for my home, my family. I like being able to take my kids on holidays. I like never being able to worry about what's in my bank account, never having to check it. I like those things. And the more I talk about it, the more I'm finding that it's touching certain women going, oh, I actually think I might like it too. And is that okay? And so, and then you start that journey of that work, and it is work. You know, I still sometimes have those thoughts in my head of like, oh my gosh, does this make me greedy? Is this a bad thing? Those sorts of things. But it is a journey, as you say. And the final thing I wanted to ask you about, Renee, is, you know, in terms of that understanding ourselves and starting to be a little bit more transparent online. I can imagine a lot of women listening right now might be feeling a little bit nervous, a little bit uncomfortable with the idea of that, because it can be a lot, and you can dive into the deep end. But what are some baby steps that you could recommend, practical baby steps that women could do just to start, you know, figuring out things about themselves, and also baby steps for putting it out there online and how they can show up in a way that's transparent but not overwhelmingly so?
Yeah, perfect. Listen, there's two different streams of thought, trains of thought, that I would mention here. One is in the visual sense. So one is showing up visibly with photos. We hate it, right? And it takes a lot of practice to get to the point where you are comfortable putting your face online. I'm a photographer. I still hate having my photos taken. Like it sucks big time. However, I also know the value of it. And so what I encourage folks to do is start somewhere safe. So many of us might have a visible platform, like a business Facebook or a business Instagram, and a personal one. I would say find your safe place. If it's a personal Facebook group, is it a chat between you and your closest girlfriends? Start somewhere small and start sending photos of yourself to somewhere where you know it's going to land well, right? And it doesn't matter that they're just your closest friends, because the practice is in yourself. The practice is you taking a photo and sharing it, and then go bigger, right? So for me, I am visibly plus size. So I will have many photos of myself from chest up. However, for me, my challenge is to always get further back and get a full body photo. And I do that regularly now, not online, not in the public space, because I'm still working on that, but I do that regularly in my personal space, because I know I need to practice what it feels like to put myself out there. So my biggest tip when it comes to photos is to practice in a safe space, and then gradually build it out. When it comes to sharing part of yourself, again, it's that same baby steps process. There are ways that you can do it that stay associated or stay related to your work, if that's what we want to start with. So whatever business you're in, you will have opinions about something. And I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head, but it might be a book that was written recently on your topic, or it might be an article or something in the news that is affected by it. Start by sharing your opinion on something. That is a really good, because your opinion, however uncomfortable you might feel, is an educated opinion, right? If you're sharing your thoughts about something that is work related, you just got to trust the fact that you know your shit. Otherwise you wouldn't be doing the job you're doing. So share your thoughts about that. Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? Would you add something to it? Would you say this relates to that? Do you know what I mean? And it's starting to bring in your personality. Another thing that I would really encourage is spend time identifying your values. Now, the reason why that's good is that it can be like your values, your core values should always be, in my opinion, your North Star. They guide your decision making. They guide what you talk about. They guide how you show up. But you can also use them as a content point that's not too sticky, right? So one of my values is courage. Now, I might have to work on that in my personal life in X, Y, and Z ways. But in my business life, courage might be showing up visibly online. It might be talking about something that is uncomfortable. I don't know if I'm making that distinction clearly,
No,
but you
that
can
makes
still
sense.
bring that value to life in your business or in your work in ways that are real to the value, because that's important, because that needs to be authentic, but aren't so personal and stuck to your scars that feels uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's baby steps. Do that for a few times, then try pushing that boundary a little bit, and then push that boundary a few times, and then go that next step further. You don't have to bear all online. That is absolutely not what we're after here. But it's about bringing more of the truth of you and the essence of you into what you're saying. It's like, I know I'm going again.
That's all
but it's
good.
like if you've tried putting something into Chat GPT, paragraph about, and it'll come back and it'll spit you back some information. And that information is very factual, right? It might be well written and it might be like very smart on a topic, but there's no personality in it. Right? So you can still have something that is smart, that is on topic, but has your personality and your values ringing through it. And I think that's a really good place to start.
Awesome. I think those tips are absolutely excellent. You know, finding that safe space and doing it there. I remember when I first started in business and Facebook Lives used to terrify me. So I have a cleft lip and palate, and so my nose doesn't look like other people's, and it's something that I was insecure about for a very, very long time. And now look at me, I'm on video with no makeup on. But back in the start of my business, I was so terrified of doing Facebook Lives because I thought, oh my God, what if people, you know, say mean things or, you know, whatever else. And so I created a Facebook group with one other friend in it. And then I took the friend out and I would do practice lives in there, and I would just go in there and practice, watch them back, give myself feedback. And then I also, you know, would seek out topics like articles about, you know, confidence on video and how to be, you know, better on video and things like that by people who were a little bit different. Maybe they were a little bit older, or, you know, had gray hairs or wrinkles, or they thought they were too fat or too skinny or whatever it was. Right. And ultimately I came to a point where I was like, it actually doesn't matter what we look like. The people who matter are not interested in that. They don't care. It doesn't matter what you look like. You could have 3 eyes and no teeth and purple skin. It does not matter. Right.
And
like
the truth is we are more focused on our negative traits than anybody else.
Yes, exactly.
So I might be sitting here watching a recording of myself and seeing 3 chins, right? However, nobody else is seeing that.
No.
Nobody else is. They're listening to what I'm saying. And it's the same with photos, right? We and I get that all the time with clients, as they look at themselves and they go, oh, I hate how I look in that because of that. And they narrow down into this tiny little thing. And what we see is that we see the entirety of this person. We see the passion in their voice. We hear the passion in their voice. We see it in their expression. That's what we're looking at. We're not looking at the 2 chins that you might think that you might be looking at. But nobody else is. And it's really hard to take our own filters off without that practice, and that showing up in like small, safe places.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Like I find that I often use that example to encourage people and say, look, if I can do it with a weird face, you can do it. I don't care what you got. Right. So
exactly.
Yeah, because it's our brain, it's our passion, it's the value that we bring to the table that people care about. And like you say, people don't look at the stuff that we're worried about. They don't care. It's all good. No.
And I would also argue the amount of clients that I've had photography wise that have come to me and said, I have decided to come to you because you look the way you do. And it's the same as you finding videos about speaking videos from all sorts of different types. And this kind of lovely circles back to the representation. You can't be what you can't see. If those women who were grey haired, bigger, smaller, whatever, hadn't shown up and created that video that then gave you the confidence to do the same thing, all we're looking at is beautiful ex-newsreaders doing videos.
Yep.
And that doesn't help us.
No. Exactly. This has been such an awesome chat, Renee. I can't thank you enough. I could talk to you for hours, but I don't want to waste
We
your
could
time.
go on for a long time.
I really, really appreciate your time and your sharing your expertise and insights with us today. If people do want to get in contact with you, what's the best way they can do that?
Sure thing. So I hang out mostly on Instagram. So it's at Renee Shea _AU on Instagram, or Renee Shea, RENEESHEA.com.au online. And I'm keen to chat to everyone.
Yes, love it, love it. Thank you so much again. And that is a wrap for this episode of The Pricing on the Cake. Thank you so much again, Renee, and everybody. We will see you on the next one. Bye.
Bye.